A lost dog in the storm, an unexpected reunion, and a love that seemed to have been buried under the dust of the past. Damien, a successful CEO, returns to a small town after 10 years, where he had a past he always tried to forget. But on a stormy night, when he saves a puppy stuck on a cliff, he doesn't expect that it will bring him to the only girl he has ever loved. Lillian Carter. The girl is still there, still as strong as ever, but her life is no longer the same. An incurable disease is eating away at her every day, and between them now is not only the old wounds, but also the distance of two completely different worlds. Can Damien help Lillian find hope again? Is love strong enough to defeat fate? Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like to support the channel and subscribe so you don't miss any stories. Now let's relax and listen to today's story. A torrential rain poured down on the small coastal town, the roads slick with fallen leaves and mud. Damien Monroe drove his luxury SUV through streets he knew by heart as a child, but now felt unfamiliar. It had been a decade since he had last set foot here, and he never thought he would return. Until the luxury hotel project he invested in required him to be present to supervise. He sighed, glancing at his watch. As soon as he finished his work, he would return to New York as soon as possible. But then, something caught his eye through the car window. Small white dog shivered on the edge of a cliff near the shore in the pouring rain. It was trying to hold on, its eyes panicked, and any gust of wind could knock it off at any moment. Damien frowned. He was no animal lover, but leaving it there in this weather was cruel. "I'm crazy," he muttered, but he pulled over, jumped out of the car, and ran toward the cliff. The wind whipped at his face, and the rain stuck his shirt to his body. Damien climbed down carefully, his feet slipping. The dog barked weakly, its eyes filled with fear. "Okay, kid, calm down." He reached out, patting it gently. It took only a few seconds for Damien to wrap his arms around its waist and pull it up safely. He breathed a sigh of relief, wiping the rain from his face. "You owe me a meal." The dog whined softly, nuzzling his head into his chest in thanks. Damien frowned when he saw an old collar around its neck, with a small scratched brass plate. He turned it over, reading the inscription. "Belongs to Lillian Carter." Everything around him seemed to freeze. His whole world shook. Lillian, the name he had tried to bury for the past 10 years, the girl he loved more than his own life, the person he lost. Damien didn't remember how he drove to the vet. All he knew was that his heart was pounding, his mind flooded with memories he had tried so hard to forget over the years. Lillian is still here? Does she still live in this town? Part of him wanted to believe it was just a coincidence. Maybe it was just the same name. But his gut told him otherwise. After the vet confirmed that the dog was not seriously injured, Damien looked back at the plaque. There was a faint address on the back. He had to find her. He drove unconsciously, not knowing how many roads and thoughts he had, and finally the car stopped in front of a small pottery workshop on the outskirts of town, nestled among the bright red maple trees. It looked old, as if time had touched every brick. Damien got out of the car. The rain had stopped, but the air was still heavy. He took a deep breath, then knocked on the door. A moment later, the door slowly opened, and there she stood, Lillian Carter. She was no longer the vibrant 20-year-old girl he had known. She was thinner. Her eyes were a little sad, but still as sharp and strong as ever. Time may change many things, but it cannot dim her gaze. Damien opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, she looked down at the dog in his arms. She sighed, as if she had known this coming. "You should take it home." Her voice was light but distant. "I can't take care of it anymore." Damien was stunned. This was not the reaction he expected. No surprise, no tears of emotion, not even resentment or blame. Just cold to the point of fear. Why are you like that? Why, after all these years, did his heart still beat so hard when he saw her, while she acted as if he never existed? Damien Monroe is not the type to give up easily. Lillian may not have wanted to see him, but he had a good reason to see her again, which was to take care of the puppy he had rescued. So he left the puppy with Lillian. The next morning, when Lillian opened the shop door, she saw Damien standing there, holding a bag of dog food. She frowned. "What are you doing here again?" Damien sat down on the steps, tore open the bag of food, and poured some into his hand. The puppy, now feeling better, happily ran up to lick his hand. "I just bring food for it." Lillian crossed her arms over her chest, staring at him. "You didn't have to do that." Damien shrugged. "I know." He looked down at the puppy, his voice softer. "But I want to." Lillian clenched her hands, trying to control her emotions. She used to know a Damien like this, stubborn, patient, and always knows how to confuse her. She took a deep breath. "You can come, but I won't offer you tea." Damien smiled. "It's okay. I don't really like tea either." As much as Lillian didn't want to admit it, she couldn't stop Damien from coming back. Every morning he comes, carrying a bag of dog food or a small biscuit. At first she tried to ignore him. But no matter how cold she appeared, Damien was there, patient and silent. He didn't ask her about the past, didn't force her to talk. Just let him be there. By your side, that's enough. And gradually, Lillian found herself getting used to his presence. She still didn't talk much to him, but every time she saw the empty box of cookies he brought, she knew that she had silently accepted him back. One day, when Damien entered the workshop, he saw Lillian standing at the potter's wheel, her hands shaking as she tried to shape a vase. Her eyes were dark, and her face was paler than ever. Damien frowned. "Lillian, are you okay?" She did not answer. And then suddenly she fell to her knees. The vase fell to the floor, breaking into pieces. "Lillian!" Damien rushed over, catching her before she fell to the ground. She was so light. Her body was so thin, he could feel her bones through her shirt. Lillian pushed him away in panic, gasping for breath. "Don't touch me!" Damien held her hand tightly, not letting her escape. "Lillian, what's going on?" His voice was filled with concern. She looked straight at him, her eyes flashing with anger, but also mixed with a hint of pain. "I don't need your pity." In a moment, he stunned Damien feels like there is an invisible punch to the chest. Pity? Did she really think he was here just out of pity? The factory door suddenly opened. A tall man walked in, his eyes full of tension. Ethan Carter approached, his eyes coldly looking at Damien. "What are you doing here?" Damien stood up, unfazed. "This has nothing to do with you." Ethan smirked. "Really? I think it's related." He looked at Lillian, his eyes softening. "Are you okay?" Lillian nodded, then turned away, not looking at Damien anymore. Ethan turned back to Damien. "You left her once. Don't hurt her again." Damien stiffened. That sentence cut into him like a sharp knife. He didn't abandon her. He was forced to leave. But does that still matter? Because apparently Lillian found someone else to protect her. Damien left the pottery studio, but his mind was filled with questions. Did Lillian really have Ethan by her side? If so, why were her eyes filled with pain when she looked at him? Why was she so weak that she almost fell right in front of him? And most importantly, what are you hiding? Damien could not bear this doubt. You must know the truth. Damien returned and locked himself in the hotel for several days in thought. Suddenly that day, the sky darkened as dark clouds rolled in, signaling a major storm was brewing. The wind howled through the streets, carrying heavy raindrops. Damien stood by the hotel room window, his eyes anxiously looking out toward the outskirts of town, where Lillian's pottery studio is located. He clutched the phone, trying to call her, but there was only a hopeless long beep. His instincts urged him to do something, and then, without a second thought, he rushed out of the hotel, running straight into the storm. By the time Damien arrived, floodwaters had already begun to pour into the pottery workshop. The winds were so strong that they would have knocked over anyone who wasn't standing. He looked out the window. His heart clenched. Lillian was struggling to move her precious ceramics to high shelves, but it was clear she no longer had the strength. Without another second's hesitation, Damien rushed forward, but thump! A strong hand stopped him. Ethan. Rain poured down his face, but his eyes remained cold. "You have nothing to do here, Damien." Damien gritted his teeth. "She needs help." Ethan shook his head. "She doesn't need you." That statement made Damien pause for a second, but then a loud bang. Both turned around. Part of the factory roof collapsed. "Lillian!" No longer caring about Ethan, Damien rushed inside, knee-deep in floodwater. Lillian coughed as dust and water mixed with the air. She no longer had the strength to stand. Everything became blurry. The surrounding sounds gradually became distant. And then a strong arm lifted her up. Familiar warmth, familiar scent. Even in her delirium, she knew who it was. Damien. He held her tight in his arms, fighting the rushing water to get her out. Ethan stood there, his face torn, but eventually backed down. Damien didn't stop until he reached a safe place. His breathing was rapid. His heart was beating so hard it felt like it was going to burst. He almost lost her again. Lillian woke up in a small room. Outside, the rain had not stopped completely. She turned her head, facing Damien's angry gaze. She had never seen him so angry. "What's wrong with you?" Lillian stiffened. "It's none of your business." Damien clenched his fists. "So this is why you pushed me away? Because you thought you didn't have time?" Lillian did not reply. Damien smiled faintly, but the smile was filled with pain. He bent down to pick up a stack of wet papers lying on the floor. Lillian suddenly felt cold, because she realized those were her prescriptions. The secret she tried to hide was finally exposed. She swallowed, her voice so small it almost disappeared. "I have no future left, Damien. Don't waste your time." Damien walked straight to her, holding her shoulders tightly. "Listen to me, Lillian." He leaned down, forcing her to look straight into his eyes. "Don't waste my time deciding what to do. If you think I'll leave you alone just because you're sick, you're wrong." Lillian choked. Damien continued, his voice filled with determination. "I won't leave you alone. No matter what happens, I'll be here, okay?" Her tears fell. For the first time in years, she felt like she was no longer struggling alone. Damien had never felt so helpless. He can turn around billion-dollar deals, can make the whole business world respect. But now, he can't protect the girl he loves from a terrible disease. For many nights, Damien barely slept. He sat in front of the computer screen, his hands flying quickly over the keyboard. A series of hospitals, doctors, and the most advanced treatments appeared on the screen. He read each report, each testimonial from patients who had been cured. Didn't just stop at finding information. He also contacted the best experts. He was willing to spend a huge amount of money to get the best treatment regimen for Lillian. Even if there is only a 1% chance, he cannot give up. But what he didn't expect, Ethan watched it all. Ethan walked into Damien's office, slamming the door shut. His eyes were full of anger. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Damien didn't take his eyes off the screen. "I'm trying to save her." Ethan chuckled sarcastically. "Save her? Or try to control her life?" At this moment, Damien turned to look at Ethan. "Do you think I did all this just to control her?" His voice was low, dangerous. "She doesn't want that," Ethan almost shouted. "Do you know how many years she's struggled to accept reality? Now you come along and try to force her to hope for something she doesn't dare to believe anymore. Have you considered her feelings? She doesn't need someone who insists on making decisions for her. She needs someone who respects her wishes." Ethan's words were like a punch straight to Damien's chest. "I never thought of it that way. You just think that as long as you try, as long as you don't give up, things will get better. But what if Ethan is right? What if what he did only made Lillian more miserable?" Damien felt his heart being squeezed. But he didn't have time to think more. Because Lillian was gone. Lillian felt suffocated. She didn't want to be at the center of a fight between two men. She doesn't want anyone to sacrifice for her. She didn't want to see Damien's eyes filled with so much pain. So she left. She has only one place to find peace, the beach where she and Damien shared their best memories. The place where Damien once promised to be with her forever. She sat on the sand, the sea breeze blowing her long hair. Tears fell silently. She was so tired. Tired of pretending to be strong. Tired of fighting your own emotions. You have the whole world. And I only have myself, she muttered, as if talking to herself. But a deep voice came from behind. No, I have you. Lillian turned around, startled. Damien stood there, on the wet sand, his face pained but determined. She couldn't believe he found her. He slowly knelt down in front of her, taking her skinny hands in his warm ones. You're never alone, Lillian. I'm here. I'm always here. Lillian shed tears. But I have a whole world to worry about. I can't give up everything for you. Damien smiled, shaking his head. You don't understand. My whole world is you. Lillian choked. She tried to push him away. She tried everything to keep him from suffering. But Damien still chose to stay. Still choose to love her. Even though she knew the road ahead might be difficult, for the first time, she was no longer afraid. Damien held Lillian's hand tightly. I can't make decisions for you, but I want you to know. If you still want to fight, I will fight with you. If you choose to give up, I won't stop you. But no matter what you choose, I will still love you, and I'm not going anywhere. Lillian choked. For the first time, she felt like someone was really listening to her. She doesn't have to be strong. She doesn't have to force herself anymore, because Damien was here. Lillian looked deep into his eyes. For the first time in years, she had hope. But then reality pulled Lillian back. Then one day, Charlotte, Damien's nominal fiancée, walked into the pottery studio with a victorious stance. She didn't need to be angry, because Charlotte knows her power. With a calm yet cold expression, Charlotte looked Lillian up and down. A thin, sickly woman living in a dilapidated pottery workshop, a man completely unworthy of Damien. Charlotte crossed her arms over her chest, her voice filled with pity. Do you really think someone like you can hold Damien back? Lillian felt her heart sink. Charlotte didn't need to yell or insult her. That one sentence alone was enough to remind her that she and Damien belonged to two different worlds. Charlotte stepped closer, her voice soft, but filled with danger. Damien is a public figure. He has an empire behind him. He can't give it all up for a woman like you. Lillian bit her lip. Not because she believed Charlotte, but because she had asked herself those questions so many times. Charlotte smiled confidently. I'm here to take him back to where he belongs, and I believe you're smart enough not to get in his way. Lillian clenched her fists. She doesn't want to be a burden, don't want to make you lose everything. So, she decided to leave. That night, Lillian quietly packed her bags. She left nothing but a letter, which she placed on Damien's desk. Just one line. Live your life. Don't let me drag you down. She did not cry. She promised herself that she would not be weak anymore. As the taxi took her to the airport, Lillian didn't look back. She didn't want to see her pottery studio one last time, not wanting to see the place where she once loved Damien, once dreamed of a future she could never have. She will disappear. Forever. Damien read the letter in panic. He threw the chair aside, crumpling the small piece of paper in his hands. She left. Or not. He couldn't lose her again. Never again. He dashed out of the office, jumped into his car, and drove like crazy to the airport. His breathing was rapid, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that they turned white. He had never felt so scared. You can lose all your assets without blinking an eye. But if Lillian is lost, I will never forgive myself. The airport is crowded. Lillian passed through security. She stood in front of the plane's doors, Only a few minutes left before the doors closed. But then, "Lillian Carter!" Damien's voice rang out over the crowd. The whole airport seemed to stop. Lillian froze in place. She turned back and saw Damien standing there panting, his eyes burning with uncontrollable emotion. He took a step forward, his voice trembling but determined. "If you get on this flight, I will never forgive you." The whole airport was silent. Lillian's heart pounded. She had never seen him like this. A Damien leaves everything behind to chase after her. A Damien willing to give up his entire world just to keep her. But she still hesitated. If she comes back, she will only make his life more complicated. She can't do that. She has to go. But before she could turn around, Damien rushed forward, pulling her back with all his might. He looked at her, his eyes full of pain. "I can't lose you again." His voice broke. "Let me be the one to go with you to the end." Lillian burst into tears. She had run away long enough. She tried to push him away. But Damien never gave up on her. He was willing to fight for her, ready to give up everything. And she knows. She can't leave. Lillian threw herself into his arms, holding him tight as if afraid that if she let go, everything would disappear. Damien held her tight, his breath shaky but full of relief. He kept her. After Damien stopped Lillian from leaving at the airport, he didn't give her a chance to refuse again. As soon as they left, his car sped straight to the top hospital he had secretly contacted earlier. This hospital is not an ordinary medical facility. It's where the experimental treatment Damien has been researching for months is being studied. As the car stopped in front of the hospital, Lillian looked up at the tall building with bewildered eyes. She didn't want to go in. "Damien, I don't want you to use money to change my fate." She clenched her fists, her voice weak but determined. "It's your life. You decide for yourself." But Damien refused to give up. He took out a medical file and placed it in her hand. "This is the latest experimental treatment protocol." His voice was deep but strong. "The doctors believe you can be cured, but you have to fight." Lillian looked at the file. Her hands trembled slightly. It's not that she doesn't believe in medicine, but because she had long since stopped believing she could survive. Ethan Monroe walked into the room, staring at Damien. Despite being the one who tried to protect Lillian from him, this time, he no longer attacked Damien. Ethan took the file and skimmed through it. A few minutes later, he sighed, his voice heavy. "Lillian, this is your best chance." Lillian looked up at Ethan. This man was there for her through the difficult years. He had thought that Damien would only hurt her. But now, he knows that only Damien can bring her the hope she never dared to believe in. Finally, Ethan nodded to Damien. "I hate to admit it, but if anyone can pull her out of this quagmire, it's you." Damien squeezed Lillian's hand tighter. "I'm not asking you to promise me anything. I just want you to promise yourself that I will not give up." Lillian finally agreed to start treatment, but she was still afraid. "What if I don't make it?" Damien took her hand firmly. "If you fall, I will be there to pick you up. We will fight together." In the months that followed, Lillian embarked on the most grueling treatment journey of her life. There were days when she was in so much pain she couldn't get out of bed. There were days when she wanted to give up. But Damien was always there. He was there for her every day, taking care of her, encouraging her, reminding her that she wasn't fighting alone. And the miracle happened. Lillian's condition is improving. Not an immediate recovery, not an overnight miracle. But hope has emerged. And for the first time in years, Lillian believed she could live. After leaving the hospital, Damien has a surprise for Lillian. He no longer cared about expanding his business empire. Instead, he decided to open an art center in town, a place where Lillian can teach pottery to children and those in need. On the opening day of the center, Lillian walked into a large room where pottery wheels were neatly arranged. She could hardly believe her eyes. Damien stood beside her, smiling softly. "This is your dream, right?" Lillian felt her heart tremble. She thought she had no future, but now she was standing in the middle of a future she never dared to dream of. The opening ceremony ended, and everyone gradually left. Lillian stood on stage, watching the children laughing and playing with clay in their hands. She felt happier than ever. And then, Damien knelt before her. But on his hand was not a magnificent diamond ring, but it is a ceramic ring. The ring she made herself when she was a child, a girl who always believed in love. Lillian gasped, tears welling up in her eyes. Damien looked into her eyes, his voice gentle but firm. "You fought hard. Now let me go with you to the end of the road." "Will you marry me?" Lillian burst into tears, but this time, they were tears of happiness. She didn't need to hesitate any longer. No need to be afraid anymore. She held out her hand, letting the ceramic ring wrap around her finger. And for the first time in my life, she felt complete. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you like this story, don't forget to like to support the channel and subscribe so you don't miss any stories.